1, 2.
Barbara's going to do the introduction. And then
She was the guilty one. And look how well it's been working.
somebody asked me about that. Right. Right. And I just said, and Barbie asked me, we edited it. And I think it ended correctly. And there was parts where he wasn't looking well. It's not. So the person who asked me, I just said, there was technical difficulties. Well, I don't think
they really want to see it.
Yeah, I don't think it.
No, that's right.
And that's the only one, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
How dare she?
The bishop.
Hey! We're up for us. Oh, did he understand? Okay. Okay, good. Good. Okay. Well, I think. Yeah. Good. Right. Yeah. No, we know. Okay. Now they know, and they got to know you, and they see Danielle's face and your wife's face, people who are friendly. Right. Right. Are you ready?
1 minute.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. I would never tell Vicky. I value my life. I might be dumb, but I'm not stupid. Give you this.
Me first? You want to do the
Is all we ask is when you talk, try to not like this. Talk like this. I'm just saying.
yeah, we should.
Are you okay, though?
I can. Okay. Hi, everybody. I think we're ready to get started. Thank you all for coming out tonight. This program should be very informative. So before we start, I have a couple of upcoming events that are happening. Tabor Church is having a blood drive this coming Wednesday from 2 to 7 and Thursday from 10 to 3. So if you're interested in helping them out with that, that would be great. The Historical Society is going to put flags at the flagpole in the park for our armed services. The flags will be up November 8th to November 12th. And that's different than what we do for Memorial Day. These are flags representing all of the branches of the armed services in honor of Veterans Day. Allagash Up in Church is having their Chris Kindle Mart on November 9th from 9:30 to 3 o'clock. So check that out. And our last meeting, which really sounds odd to be announcing our last meeting, is going to be November 25th. That's the Monday before Thanksgiving. It's the Lost Covered Bridges of Montgomery County by a gentleman named Scott Bomboy. He's written a book, and I think he's going to have the books here for sale. So we'll let you know that in an email that comes out. On the table out in the foyer there are lots of information pieces about the Historical Society and different things that we do. And there are forms for veterans there. If you are a veteran or know a veteran, please fill out the form. And there's a couple sign-in sheets around. If you got here and didn't sign in, we'll make sure, please try to make sure you do that. We already have your email address. There's no reason to put your email address down again. Just put yourself through there. Okay? Before we start, let's stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You know, we start planning our meetings probably in January or February of the year, and we try to plan them all out, and it's down to the last couple, and we think, I hope the people remember they're going to do this. I hope they know they're coming. And tonight we have a really good program. So Barbara's going to do the honors of introducing.
Okay, most of you are local. Most of you know of John R. Young's. We have a fifth generation representative from the John R. Young Company who's going to give us family history and business history. So let's give Josh a warm welcome.
Are we on? Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming here tonight. For this presentation on the history of the John R. Young Company. I know you're all familiar with this series of presentations from the Upper Salford Historical Society. By way of a quick introduction, my name is Josh Young. I am a fifth generation owner of John R. Young Company. And as we go through this history together, I think you'll see the multi-generational ownership is central to the continuation and growth of the company over the span of now very nearly 135 years. To that end, I just want to take a moment to thank a few people who made this possible tonight. Most of the information I'm going to share with you comes from the efforts and historical preservation of former company president Donald Young. He is also, most of the artifacts, particularly the documents you see on the table here, come from his personal collection. So very little of this would be possible without his contribution. Additionally, my father Jack helped me organize a lot of this stuff you see before you, and helped me kind of make sense of the history where confirm and corroborate what Donald was telling me, made a lot of that very sensible for me. So, and additionally, my partner Steve Young, another fifth generation partner of the company, he provided a lot of the imagery you will see in the presentation specifically. So, my strategy in tackling a 134-year-old company is to start with a very simplified and very compressed timeline of the company's existence, and then dive into each section sort of as we go. So hopefully this works. Excellent. Starting in the 1880s, William F. Young, out of Chester, Pennsylvania, began work as a salesman in the local area here, selling waxes and kerosene, primarily to small farms. As he became more and more familiar with the area, he was struck with an idea. Instead of working for someone else, selling someone else's product, he could settle down here in the upper end of Montgomery County, start his own business, selling the same product to the same people. So he did just that, buying right around 30 plus acres to build a house, a barn, and raised his family just down the street from this building in Hendricks, Pennsylvania. In the year 1890, William F. Young establishes the William F. Young Company, selling waxes and kerosene to local farmers near Upper Salford and Hendricks. Over the next 25 years, the company becomes William F. Young and Sons and expands into other industries. And one of his sons, John Ron Young, who can be seen in this picture here. Let me go around the back here of the spear for a moment. That is John R. Young right there. He was obviously very young at the time, but this is one of the original delivery trucks from the early 1900s. And that is my great-great-grandfather, my great-grandfather, standing right there. He begins taking over the company around about 1928. And it is in 1928 that John R. Young incorporates the business and renames it John R. Young and Company. Between that time and into the 1960s, the third generation of ownership expands into heating oil delivery and lubricant distribution. Over the next 40 years, the fourth generation expands into other industries, like convenience store operation, backyard shed manufacturing, and further increasing the lubricant distribution and heating oil lines of business. And this finally brings us to the current era, as the fifth generation of family ownership continues to lead the company going forwards. In a few moments, we'll dive a bit deeper into each one of these areas. But first, a few quick notes about Young's as we move on. As I've stated before a few times now, John R. Young Company is proudly fifth generation owned family business going back to 1890. In that time, the company has seen and survived a number of changes, both internally and externally. We built and operated the very first electric service station pump between Allentown and Norristown, Pennsylvania. We became the longest and oldest continually operating Pennzoil distributor in the United States of America, a relationship that dates back to 1930 and has continued through Pennzoil's acquisition of Quaker State in the late 1990s, through Pennzoil's own acquisition by Shell Lubricants in 2005. We survived the Great Depression, multiple wars, 2 pandemics, and several devastating floods. And we proudly provided jobs for hundreds of area and regional residents. Now, let's go ahead and dig into that history a little bit deeper. The first area we're going to look at, I am calling our early history. And our first stop here is to look at the company's actual origins. As I stated, William F. Young worked as a salesman for a company that would eventually become part of the Atlantic Richfield Company, more commonly known as ARCO. During his time employed there, he was assigned to a territory that included this little community in the upper end of Montgomery County called Upper Salford and Hendricks and the surrounding areas. He'd travel from farm to farm, selling waxes and kerosene as his customers needed and making deliveries. Eventually, William decided he'd like to settle down in the area, and he purchased about 30-plus acre plot of land along the Perkiomen Creek with his wife Mary to build a home and erect a barn that would both serve him on the farm and as the original site of the company offices, providing supplies to those same farmers, even as William and his wife went about raising their family. You can see how the plot of land looks today in the image on the screen. The yellow outline is my layman's attempt to outline the original 30-plus acres. It is not quite accurate to the property lines, but it gives a good idea. You can see here, this is still the original farmhouse that was erected by William and his wife. The barn would have been about here. Company offices were here for several decades, and up into this area was a rather expansive tank farm facility. Perkiomen kind of bounds it to the west and the south, And that's Hendricks Road, kind of bisects the property right in the middle, and that is now the Perkiomen Trail, previously a rail line that came through the area. Sometime in the 1880s, William and Mary, maiden name Ron, settled on their 30-plus acres to start raising their family, and together they raised at least 8 children. I say at least 8 children because no one is really sure how many children there were. Family and company history agree on at least 8, so that's what we're going to go with. Of those 8, 3 sons would eventually go on to join the company, working for their father. In 1890, William founds the William F. Young Company, offering those waxes and kerosenes. He go on to expand the company into the operation of a copper quarry and an ice house along the Perkiomen Creek during the winter. William became a prominent local businessman, providing services to the local community and serving on a very early incarnation of the Union National Bank's board of directors. Now known as Univest, they are still based in nearby Souderton, Pennsylvania. Between 1900 and the 1930s, the second generation of ownership would begin to participate in the company, and William would rebrand the company as William F. Young and Sons. The second generation of ownership consisted of Fred R., Jacob R., and John R. Young. Fred would tragically pass away in an accident on the grounds of the company-owned quarry, while John would go on to gradually take over the most direct control of the company, eventually renaming it John R. Young and Company and officially incorporating it in the year 1928. He and his wife Lillian, maiden name Bonneberger, would build a home in Hendricks and raise their 11 children. He would go on to retire to Clearwater, Florida, sometime in the mid-1950s, passing away there in November of 1973 at the age of 85. Interestingly enough, this photo of John R. Young, I believe, was taken in what is now the chapel of this church. He and several of his brothers helped in the construction of the original chapel of this church. The original photo is somewhat bigger and gives you an idea of the pews, and they fit my mental picture of what those pews look like, so I'm pretty sure that is him sitting in this church. All right. So now, we move on to what I'm calling the era of company expansion. And that starts with the company's third generation of family ownership during the 1930s and stretching through the 1970s. 6 of John and Lillian's 11 children would come to work for the company, and all 6 of them would work until their retirements. They were Florence B. Young, retired in 1970. Walter B. Young, most commonly known as Pete, retired in 1974. John B. Young, also retired in 1974. Leroy B. Young, commonly known as Bill, retired in 1983. Frederick B. Young, got ahead of me. Oh, sorry, got behind myself a little bit there. Leroy, commonly known as Bill, retired in 1983. Frederick B. Young, retired in 1986. And my grandfather, Charles B. Young, known as Jim, retired in 1989. You will notice a trend that several of them had nicknames that had nothing to do with their actual names. That was just a thing they did, and no one really seems to know why. During this period, the company expands to providing services to those same small local farms, but also branching out to include larger regional farms, auto dealerships, repair shops, and grocery stores. It is also during this period that the company starts providing heating oil and HVAC services to area residents. In the late 1950s and early 60s, the company, in earnest, develops its petroleum lubricant distribution line of business, expanding its delivery range out to approximately a 30 to 40 mile radius from Hendricks, Pennsylvania. Just a real quick aside, I want to show you two photos of this area of the company, of this era of the company's history. In the photo there, you can see an aerial shot of the company's facility that just down the street from here in Hendricks. The original farmhouse barn here can be seen here. This is the offices and storage facility here, and you can see the tank facility sort of in the center bottom. It's real hard to make out here, but that is the Perkiomen Creek back there, and it would kind of circle out around and come up the side here. And you can just make out, sort of hidden in the tree line, where the now the trail where the rail line used to be. And obviously, this is Hendricks Road there, bisecting it in half. So those tanks would have held kerosene, heating oil, and diesel fuel. That was the primary line of business for the fluid lubricants, or fluid petroleum for the company for quite a number of years. In this photo, you can see a prop engine plane bearing our company's contact information at the time on the tail. The slogan that the pilot or owner of the plane has written says, "This ship uses Pennzoil." And it says, "Sound your Z's" for Pennzoil. It's very likely the previous photo we just saw was taken aboard this plane. So, from the 1970s until the very early 2000s, the company would continue to expand its business and the involvement of the next generation of ownership. Bob and John, sons of Walter, would work for the company for about 2 and 4 years respectively. John Richard, son of John B., works for the company until his eventual retirement in 2008. Leroy W., again, usually called Bill or Billy, and Donald, sons of Leroy B., will also work for the company until their respective retirements in 2010 and 2013. And Jack, son of Charles, and my father, would also join the company and work until his retirement just earlier this year in 2024. During this stretch of time, the company keeps branching out, seeking to diversify in any way that makes sense. New company ventures include the manufacturing of backyard sheds, the opening and operation of 2 local convenience stores, dubbed Young's Mart, one at the top of Sumneytown Hill on Route 63, and the other on Route 29 in Perkiomenville, where the company maintained a 24-hour credit-based automated fuel pump. Both Mart locations house popular delis, and the Mart on top of the hill operated an outdoor and fishing supply department that was popular with those coming from closer to Philadelphia to go fishing at the nearby Green Lane Park and Reservoir. The Mart on 29 also grew to provide VHS video rentals. Additionally, Young's would open a tire and automotive center in the 1980s in Pennsburg, Pennsylvania, to service both the company's growing fleet of vehicles and to provide automotive repair, tire, and lubricant work for our local neighbors. Another quick aside for 2 photos of note. I know they're a little small in this picture, but you can see the company partners during this era. From left to right is Donald, Leroy W., Billy, John Richard, and my father Jack. They are standing in front of the original barn that was erected by William F. Young here in Hendricks. And this photo just shows another angle of the company offices. The barn can just be seen right there. The farmhouse still stands. It is no longer owned by the company, but it would be on the other side of the barn there. You can find the farmhouse. The address is 1772 Hendricks Road. But like I said, it's not owned by the company. I cannot encourage you to drop by. It is owned by a private resident, so give them their space. So, which finally now brings us to today. The fifth generation, we're currently in our fifth generation of ownership from the Young family, and the company is still going strong in 2024. My partner Steve and I currently serve as owners and partners of the company, but we are not alone in representing the fifth generation of family employees of John R. Young & Company. Chris Young, Steve Young, and Lori Rose are the sons and daughter of John Richard and have all worked for the Youngs. Chris worked for about 8 years, Lori for nearly 15, and Steve serves as our current company president. Jeff Young, Jeff Young is the son of Leroy W., and Todd Young, the son of Donald Young, both worked for the company for periods of about 2 years. And myself and my younger brother Matthew, sons of Jack Young, have both worked for the company now for over a decade. Matt worked for Young's for 12 years before moving on, and I have been with the company for 12 years myself, combined between my 11 years of service since 2013 in September, and the year I spent making hoagies at Route 29, my senior year of high school. We are now in our 134th year as a company. We still operate our tank facility in Upper Salford. We still own much of the original property purchased by William Young back in the 1880s along the Perkiomen Creek, though operations now have mostly moved out of the Upper Salford area. Today, we have a delivery range of 100 plus miles on some products due to increased demand and delivery efficiency. We provide a full range of motor vehicle lubricant and fluid products via our Young's Lubricant Division brand. Our Young's Tire and Automotive Division still provides top-level inspection, automotive repair, and maintenance services in the original Pennsburg, Pennsylvania location. And our Young's Home Comfort Division, now based in Green Lane, Pennsylvania, provides heating oil and HVAC service for roughly 2,700 area homes and families. This and the next handful of slides show some of our current operations and equipment. This is our Green Lane office facility, home of the corporate offices and our Home Comfort Division. And the bulk oil side of the lubricant division is also at this facility, but not pictured. It's kind of behind this building. This is our tank facility on Perkiomen Road, and technically Waxhaw. The facility houses a tanker loading rack, you can see there in the foreground. A decommissioned 1 million gallon tank there in the background there. This is a 420,000 gallon tank used for heating oil storage that is currently in operation, and this tall thin tank is a 30,000 gallon tank reserved for diesel or kerosene. And this is a picture of our current warehouse in Palm, Pennsylvania. We're located there primarily because it gives us easy access to western Berks County, areas beyond that. We now go as far west as York, Pennsylvania, into Philadelphia, very rarely into New Jersey, and north as far as Route 80 for our warehouse division. These are some of our current trucks. The one on the left is our newest heating oil tanker. Literally just went into service this summer. It is brand spanking new. On the right, you see two of our lubricant division box trucks and a bulk motor oil tanker truck right there. All right, real quick before we wrap up, I wanted to take a moment and talk about the importance and value of being a fifth generation owned small family business, specifically as it relates to John R. Young & Company. It is highly unusual for a family owned business to reach its fifth generation, particularly in a family of this size. But that large family and its direct involvement in the continuing operation of the company has let each subsequent generation learn the family business side by side with the generation before, and in most cases, the generation after. They have worked with aunts, uncles, fathers, brothers, cousins, and it has allowed the original company values of honesty, integrity, and loyalty to be passed directly, generation to generation, as the company moved forward through time and grew. It has ensured that the ethics and values of the company on how the company should be run can be traced back in a direct, unbroken line from today to the 1880s. Personally, I remember having a lot of trouble deciphering who at our many company picnics that I would attend as a child was family and who wasn't. Conversely, I was never 100% sure at our family reunions who worked for the company and who didn't. The company and the family are inseparable. Additionally, the Young family has always been one of deep faith, which has helped inform those values and ethics. The sons, daughters, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of John R. Young all grew up attending many of the area's churches. My earliest faith memories all involve this church, upon which the original chapel was built by many Youngs, and among others, and on land donated by William F. Young. Finally, it is not by accident that we begin our board meetings with a personalized prayer by one of the partners, and we end it in unison with the Lord's Prayer. All right, I will stop here, open the floor to questions or comments. Understand that I know so much. If you have a real deep, in-depth question, I'm happy to see what I can dig up and get an email address or something, and I will get back to you with an answer. But other than that, please feel free to peruse the documents and the artifacts on the tables here in front of the sanctuary. Thank you to the Upper Salford Historical Society for the opportunity, and thank you to Tabor United Methodist Church for hosting the presentation.
If you were heading towards the church here from the Perkiomen Bridge, just before the railroad tracks, on the right-hand side, it looks like there was sort of a siding and a coal dump. Was that part of the Young's empire, or was that somebody else?
Dad, do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
There was a station there, but that's good though, I know.
Okay.
Everything we did was back at the curb with the sliding.
Well, if you are coming down the trail, there's a siding that would go into where the tank farm was. But it looks like as the railroad continued down, there was another siding on the other side of the road, and where that barn and actually, I guess, Hilda Beidle's garage was, that looks like it was, a coal yard. And I didn't know whether you guys were in coal, which seemed like you'd be competing with yourself.
As far as I know, it's been liquid petroleum and briefly the copper mine. I don't know anything about a coal operation though.
John, can you get back to the truck in the first picture?
At the very start of the presentation.
The old truck where John.
Oh yeah, sure. Hold on.
I just think it's interesting to see this. It's the kind of stuff that interests me about history. If we can get there.
We're almost there.
What? I will.
There.
No,
next one.
There it is.
There we go.
There it is. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's a stone, a circular stone here, with a sprocket and chains. That's what drove that vehicle. It was basically a wagon with 4 wheels and a tank on the back and a steering wheel. And I don't know what size engine was in. You can tell there's very little room for one, so something drove it. I just think that's interesting. I don't know. That can't be more than the 200-gallon tank.
It's not a large tank at all. So.
The story I was told was that if you drove over a pothole, that stone only dropped so far, you could get stuck. And then you have to roll back or get pushed onto an area where it would move. The other thing that struck me was you were going through it, when you showed the pictures of the big tanks, the fuel tanks. I remember when the underground tank regulations came out, or tank regulations in general. We waited to get contacted because they were inspecting and doing all that kind of stuff. And we finally called the DEP, or whatever it was called back then in Pennsylvania. And they said, oh, no, we're not worried about your tanks. They're pre-World War II. That's the good steel. We're not worried about those. If you haven't had a leak till now, we'll get to you eventually, they said. So I think that's all I got.
My dad, Clifford Gerhard, was real good friends with John R. Young. And he told me that that truck there used to have to back up Sumneytown Hill because it had a gravity-fed fuel tank. But John R. Young and my dad used to go fishing a lot together.
Okay. Anyone else?
How many siblings are there now that will carry on after your generation?
So Steve has 3 daughters. I don't know if any of them would have an interest. I have one son, Samuel. He would be here tonight, except he has a Cub Scout Halloween trunk or treat that he decided was more important. He has already told me his career goals. He either wants to drive a fuel oil truck or work in HVAC. So there's a shot that there would be a 6th generation, yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
Congratulations on your long-term success.
Thank you.
But I know there are rules within the company, mandatory retirement, and then who the next succession is. Can you just briefly sort of give us a thumbnail sketch of, that's part of your success, I'm sure, because you know when it's, Jack knows when it's time to retire, and whoever takes over next. And,
Sure.
and that creates peace in the family long-term, which is why you're in the 5th generation, because most companies never make it past the 3rd generation.
So there are rules about strongly recommended retirement ages. It is, right now, it is 65 years old. That has been stretched recently, mostly because the reality of modern retirement age is that, you know, particularly Social Security, you're not fully vested till 67. So we are not as eager to force people out the door because of that. As of right now, there are just 2 partners, so we kind of get to decide what those rules will be going forwards. We are in a position where we can make those choices. My partner Steve is only a handful of years older than I am, so we got several decades ahead of each of us, where those can be a lot of those rules were made at a time when economic conditions were different. So, but yes, in general, the idea was if you had to be retired at a certain point, there was a timeline where a ticking clock where you had to have the next generation ready. And the next generation didn't have to sit on the sidelines for too long before they had their opportunity. Now, like I said, the reality is I can speak for my son, Sam. I do think he has an interest. He's about to be 11, so he's got some time where that might change. And like I said, I don't know about Steve's daughters. So hopefully it will carry on, and some of these rules and guidelines, and like I said, this sort of legacy can carry forwards. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious, and do you have like a board of directors so that you could have some of your current retirees get more involved to make sure you instill the future of the company?
Sure, yeah. Typically speaking, when a partner retires, they leave the board of directors. Recently, with my father's retirement, he is still assisting us with board meetings of the board of directors. Right now, it consists of Steve, myself, our company controller, and my father, Jack. For the sake of completeness, the recent retiree, Donald, former president, was also asked if he would like to rejoin the board. He's enjoying retirement. He elected not to. Can't blame him. But yes, that is a recent trend, and it's one that I personally welcome because, you know, there is an institutional and historical knowledge possessed by my father and his cousins that they know the legacy of this company better and more completely than Steve and I do through our own experiences. No, over here then. Go ahead.
Hi. Yeah. Was the railroad tracks, which is now the trail, was there ever a spur from the railroad tracks to where the near where the tanks were?
My understanding, there was a spur for the quarry. There was a, not a spur, but a, I'm not sure the railroad, but a stopping point for our tanks, because you saw the one photo very early on. There was a Pennzoil tanker rail car that would have offloaded there. So no spur, but they did stop there to offload to the tanks.
Another question, you
Yeah.
mentioned about that you were in the ice house business.
Yeah.
Was that on the property, the original property there?
I assume it would have been, yeah. The original, the deeds to the property doesn't include any of the Perkiomen, but I have to assume, because it butted right up against it, that they walked out into the Perkiomen and set up their ice house there.
Yeah, because when I mow the lawn, I have to bypass what I was told was the old ice house.
Okay.
I own the house.
Oh.
The original, so.
Oh, hi, welcome.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier about that. Yeah, some ice. Yeah, that's it for now.
There was someone over here.
I just wanted to ask, how many total employees do you have right now?
Right now, we tend to hover around 50. Some are seasonal. That, you know, depending on how busy we are, we might go just a little over 50. But 50 is right about the sweet spot, and being at 50 or just below it has some advantages in that we are considered a smaller class business than if we had more employees than that. So, but yeah, we typically hover right around there. In my research, the most it's ever been is right around 60, but we are sitting at about 50 spread over all of our divisions.
It's very interesting, the evolution the company has taken and the different branches it has gone into.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see for the future?
Admittedly, there are challenges, particularly in the home heating oil side. It's not a surprise to anyone. No one's building new construction with fuel furnaces. So, you know, you're dealing with typically older customers who may not be in their home long term, additionally. So there are challenges there. From the HVAC side, you know, every new house that gets built there's a heat pump and an HVAC unit installed on it, and that's a line of business that's not going anywhere. The lubricants side, obviously there's the EV push. But you know, cars, trucks, equipment still needs lubricants. So until that goes away, that is an industry that is still open and fair game. So there are challenges now just because of the way the market in all of our divisions is going. But there is still a core constituency of customers for us to service. And related to like the home heating oil side, you know, until there's some kind of initiative to make it affordable to replace heating oil tanks and fuel burners, someone needs to deliver those customers heating oil. So we've been here for 134 years. I don't see us going anywhere anytime soon. So.
Do you know where the original copper mine was?
Along the rail track, someone who was here earlier was saying it's just off their property. Excuse me, I apologize. I live near it. But yeah, if you walk the Perkiomen Trail, let me get the picture. Get back to the picture of this. If you walk the trail this way, my understanding is it was up this way. And there was a railroad spur that went off to it that has since been shuttered. But you can still find the spur, and it would have been back there.
Thank you very much
Yeah.
for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you.